Hi everyone, I'm really excited to introduce you to Kim Kuypers. She is an associate professor at Maastricht University at the Faculty of Psychology and Neuroscience. Her main topics of interest are MDMA and psychedelics and their effects on social cognition, creativity, and underlying neurobiology. Her belief is that science is about moving people and being moved both in a physical and emotional way. So on that note, thank you very much, Kim, for joining us today.
Yes, thank you, Deborah, for the invitation.
So there's a lot of excitement and talk about microdosing. It's a popular thing, it's come back again. And first, before we get into it, I'd like to know from you, what is microdosing? So for all of us that can really understand what that means.
Well, microdosing is actually taking small amounts of psychedelics and not only taking it once, but in a repeated fashion. So some people do it once a week, some do it every 2 days, and their main motivation is to enhance processes. So to enhance productivity, enhance mood.
So why is everybody so excited about it? What are we lacking? Why do we want this so much?
Yeah, great question. I think people are, and then we have different kinds of people. You have people who have a normal well-being, looking for ways to improve themselves. I liked it that one study also said that people see it as a holistic, or as part of a holistic way to improve themselves, microdosing. So besides healthy eating and sporting, people microdose. But then you also have these other people who are suffering, who have low mental well-being and are not being helped. I'm then talking about people with depression or anxiety disorders who are not being helped with conventional treatments, and they are looking for alternatives, and some suggest that microdosing might help. So I think that is why it's so popular. People are looking to improve themselves, and people are looking for novel treatments to help them.
Do you think therapists and psychiatrists are pro this approach? People being on a long-term type of medication, let's call it that, in order to improve themselves, or would they prefer people to actually get cured instead of being dependent?
Yeah, to be honest, I never had this kind of discussions about repeated taking, but I had discussions with psychiatrists about taking psychedelics per se, so in regular doses. And research shows that after 1 or 2 doses, people are with treatment-resistant depression are helped by psychedelics. Not everybody, but it helps them. And then I had these discussions with psychiatrists, and some are really in favor of this, and others are hesitant, and they even believe that the traditional treatments are helping people. So before psychedelics will enter the psychiatric ward, I think there is some work there to talk with psychiatrists to show them the potential of these treatments, but we also should tell them that it will not work for everybody. Then you have the second aspect. You say, what about microdosing when people have to take it repeatedly? Well, I've been thinking about that too, because if we take another example, people say microdosing helps for ADHD. People with ADHD take their methylphenidate also daily. So that would now change in taking, if it helps in ADHD, that would now change in taking a psychedelic in a low dose every 2 days, 3 days. We do not know the right schedule. So that's then the same. You're also using medication. But I think the difference there is, if you look at this specific example, some patients with ADHD also complain about the unwanted effects of methylphenidate. They say it changes my personality. And we also know that psychedelics change your personality, but that is in a different way than psychedelics open up people, make, I think some say, an improved version of yourself. So in that sense, the repeated use would be different because it does not change your your basic personality. Do you know what I mean? It does not numb you, but it makes a better version of you.
Right. I think that is the big difference than traditional medications that really do change the essence of who you are.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. People don't feel like themselves, and that's a big thing. What have you found through your studies in terms of the microdosing, the positive, the negative effects? I know that's a massive question because you've been spending a lot of time on this, but
oh no, I can be so short. This is horrible.
Well,
no.
do what you can. I'll just interrupt you.
No. But to start off, not a lot of work has been done. So we have some old studies, but they used a methodology that is not according to the traditional standards. So actually there is not a lot of work, and the work that has been done, I'm now talking about the experimental placebo-controlled studies. They show effects, but very subtle effects. But most of these studies give a dose once and do not give it repeatedly. So what has been shown is, for example, with LSD, is that it changes your perception of time. This can be a very trivial finding, but if you see it in another light, if you combine it with the anecdotal reports that people take it to cure their ADHD, then it makes sense, because these people are kind of rushed, and if it slows you down, it's good. And that also links to what people say, it makes me more mindful, more in the moment. So that is a good finding, but it's only a small finding, but it's also in a small sample. So I think for all these studies, and I will give another example later on, I think we need replication of these data. Another finding that was, so what I said about time perception, that was from another lab. We showed, for example, that it enhances your attention. So this also links again to ADHD. Again, only one dose. So not repeated doses. So what we're now doing is giving repeated doses of LSD to healthy volunteers to see whether we find the same effects or different effects.
Right, because that's the whole part of microdosing, right? That you're doing it over a period of time.
Indeed.
And noticing the effects. So to do it once is kind of, I'm not surprised that maybe you're not getting all the information that you want based on that.
No, but we had a reason to do that because we first also thought we will do it a repeated dosing study, but where to start? Because we did not even know what a microdose is. We know it from anecdotal reports, and usually they say it's 1/10 of a regular dose. What is a regular dose? You can say for LSD is between 100 and 200 micrograms. So if you take 1/10, that is 10 or 20 micrograms. We have included both doses in our study, and we see that it makes a difference because we see the effects on cognition after the 20 microgram dose, but we also see that people become aware of it, that they took something. And if you look at the definition of microdosing, people say that it is sometimes it is included in the definition that it's subperceptual. So if you take a dose that has effect, it is not subperceptual. You notice it, and that is not really bad. But if we're then looking into the future and LSD would be prescribed, then this should become part of the patient leaflets. It can enhance your performance. However, it can also cause perceptual changes. And one example was that our participants saw we have very nice doors in our lab with text printed on it, and they saw the text moving. So if you take that during the day while you have to go to work, it might cause problems.
Yeah, I could see if things are starting to move during a meeting, that could be an issue. So yeah, I can see that. So what I also wanted to ask you in terms of the effects, could you see any, besides the perception, any other type of negative effects from your studies?
Good question. I'm thinking really hard. I do not know. We took a mood state questionnaire, but I cannot remember whether we found increased anxiety. This is something that people report in anecdotal studies or in retrospective studies. So where they talk about their experience in retrospect, anxiety can increase. And the interesting thing I found in one of these publications is that they say that it is linked to microdosing can bring up latent emotional content. And that is why it sometimes causes anxiety in people. And that is something interesting in the light of therapy. If you would like to use it in depression, it can start off the therapeutic process, because if you bring emotional content that where a person was not very aware of to the surface, you can start talking about it and do something about it. We also know from questionnaire studies that people sometimes feel nausea or dizziness, but most of the time these negative effects are linked to the acute state, so not after the day after they took it. What I've also learned is that people sometimes have not that good days after they took it. So that can happen too. It is very, there is an individual component. We also saw that in our study, it does not work for everybody, the same dose, or some people need more. So there are a lot of questions that still need to be answered. But you asked, are there negative effects? Yes, there are. And people also state that sometimes they stop because of these unwanted effects, or sometimes they also stop microdosing because it does not bring them what they expected that it would bring them. An expectation, that is also something very interesting. Because if you read about all these positive effects and you think, oh, it will cure, or it will help with my depression, or it will enhance my productivity, you know that people are very powerful and it can work then too, because you believe in it.
Right, which is where the placebo sometimes takes effect, I guess. And
Indeed.
is it too early to say if we know about long-term effects based on these studies being more recent?
You mean negative long-term effects?
Negative, positive? We
Negative,
don't know.
that is a question. Sometimes it is mentioned that you have when substances are working on a serotonin 2B receptor, and you take a substance repeatedly, it can cause heart problems. And we also know that psychedelics they mainly work on the serotonin 2A receptor, but they can also work on the 2B. So that is the question. Will it cause heart problems if you take it repeatedly in low doses? We don't know. It is a question, but I do not know whether they will cause it. We have to answer the question.
We have to ask all the guys from Silicon Valley that had taken it all those years ago. And based on that, is that a real thing? Is this what happened? Is that a myth?
I don't know. We all know that San Francisco is a psychedelic hotspot, and it will probably be used there, but I don't know. I also do not know whether a study took place there. I've thought about it, about doing a study there, but it never came to that. So if people have money, give it to me and I will do a study there.
There you go. Now you'll see at the bottom of your screen. Maybe you could, now we're talking about the study, could you just tell me a little bit about how you ran your study, what it involved, so we can understand a little bit more about that?
So from start to end, well, it involves a lot of steps. We first start with a protocol. We think a lot about it, about the design, and then we submit it to the ethics committee. When they approve it, we can start. So we had chosen to start with healthy volunteers, and like I said, a dose finding study to know what kind of LSD dose causes effects in healthy volunteers. We did a power analysis, so we knew that we needed 24 healthy participants, and it was a crossover design. So we had 4 conditions: LSD, 5, 10, and 20 milligrams, and a placebo. So they came 4 times to the lab, and then they did some baseline tests. So just to know how their mood was each day. Then they received the drug, and then we did some testing afterwards, and they stayed for 6-7 hours in our lab. And then you have the data of these 24 people in 4 conditions, and then you run statistical analysis. That is basically what we did. But I do not know what you want to know more.
Well, I want to know what you kind of found. What do you come out saying to future people that you wanna get funding for? That this is what we've seen, and it's encouraging to show this, this, and this.
I think our main findings were, and like I said, we took a whole battery of tests. We had some measures where we did not find effects. Our most important findings were that it enhances positive mood, it enhances attention, and it causes you to not feel pain that much. So if I would say, I would go in the direction of investigating ADHD and pain-related disorders for LSD. I've also thought about psilocybin, because what interests me is that people state it has different effects. They experience more stimulant effects when taking LSD, and psilocybin is more not mellow, but it causes more emotional effects. So I think you can see psilocybin more moving in the direction of anxiety disorders, depression, so disorders where the emotional component plays a big role. And then LSD in the more in the disorders where you have attention problems.
Do you see this becoming a prescription medication one day?
I've thought about that too. The main question is, do you need a psychologist? Because you can state, well, it's subperceptual, or it might not be subperceptual. So you can take it on your own. But when it causes emotional content to come to the surface, you might need a psychologist. So that will be the tricky part. Can you take it on your own or not? And then you also have the safety aspect. If you give people a stack of microdoses, they can just all put it together and have a full psychedelic dose. But that is something I think the pharmaceutical companies can worry about, because you can create something. You will be able to create something. I don't know. They will be able to figure that one out. So will it become prescription medicine? At this stage, I don't know. I see practical issues.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. What do you think that if it does become a prescription medication, and based on the studies that you've done, how far off do you think we are from all of this coming to being accepted?
That is a very complicated question, because you state to be accepted.
Well, okay, yeah, that's
yeah,
true.
no, but it's valid. I think we are still far away from it being accepted. And then you have multiple parties, because you have the legal side. So they should change something about that, because you're working with forbidden medicines or substances. You have the person that has to prescribe it. Will he or she want to prescribe it? And then you have the patients who should be open to getting this medication. But to me, it's so if the law says it is okay, we're one step closer, and then it comes down to And I'm not into convincing people. I'm not a prophet, or how do you call it? I think we just need to get the information across. Just state you have this substance and it can do this and this and this, positive effects, negative effects, and then let the patient decide, because that thing, I think, is the most important thing. We should move into a patient-informed culture where the doctor just gives all the options and the patient can try out the medication, because it will not work for everybody, psychedelics or microdosing. But it can be an alternative in the whole range of medication.
Well, I think you're making a valid point, because at the moment you do have a range of medications, and medications don't always work the same for everybody. And I think that's always probably must be a stumbling block when you're investigating something, because all medications have negative and depends on who's taking them. Doesn't mean it's not a value or worth being an option to people. What led you to go in the microdosing direction in the beginning? Something must have tweaked if there was something there.
Oh, this is so funny why we moved into microdosing, because we have a long history of doing MDMA studies. And then we also added psychedelics to it. And then one day we were, I think it was 2016 or 17, it became more and more apparent in the media, and we always go together to lunch with colleagues. And we were discussing microdosing, and because we were always in the high range with the dosing, we stated, yes, this is purely a homeopathic effect. It probably is a homeopathic effect, something like that. But then we started thinking about it, and we were already running a study for Amanda Fielding from the Beckley Foundation. So a study with full doses of psilocybin. And well, she's very interested in microdosing, and we connected. And so we wrote a protocol and we did the study. That is basically how we came to microdosing.
So over lunch.
Yeah.
And that's why all your meals are important in the day, because you never know what's going to come out of it. So going back to when I introduced you, you said science is about moving people and being moved both in a physical and emotional way. And do you feel like that is what you're achieving through this study?
Well, every time people ask me to talk about this, I hope to bring across my passion. Like I said, I do not want to convince people about something, but I want to inform them and get them interested in it, so they can have a look for themselves, or might even do research, not research at home, I mean scientific research. It is about, I'm not only interested in psychedelics, I have a broad field of interest, and I think this is needed. And if other researchers have that too, you can combine scientific fields and come quicker to something bigger. And like I said, if I talk about it, I also want to move people with the content. And when I say it's also about physically moving people, I'm thinking about conferences. You go somewhere to bring across your passion and to share it and to get new ideas. That is what is behind my quote.
Well, I think it's important. I think it's important to care, and obviously you do. What's the next part of your study? What's the aim? Where do you want to go next?
Well, I have so many wild ideas, but for now we're doing, like I said, the repeated microdosing study with LSD. I hope that I once can also do one with psilocybin, and the ultimate thing would be to compare the both substances. I want to do studies in patients, because I think for me the starting point is anecdotal reports. Listen to what people say, why do they take it, and then bring this to the lab, try it out in healthy volunteers to see if you see effects, and then go to the right patient population and test them. So that are my 3 steps. Listen to people, try it out in healthy people, and then move to patients. I hope I can.
Did the people that you tested on, they've had experience with psychedelics, or?
Yes. And that is something, when we started off with our MDMA studies, we chose that path because when we first submitted, and then I'm talking about 1999, it sounds like Prince, we had to submit our protocol to the ethics, and we thought, well, how can we not sell it, but what is the best way to do? Say that we are using drug-naive people and give them a drug that they might like and are going to use repeatedly, or take people who are already experienced, know what to expect, so that they are not overwhelmed in the lab, and also that we know that they do not have a bad experience when taking a drug. So we went that way, and we always include people that have experience. There are other labs too, like in the lab in Switzerland, they also use drug-naive people, and I think that should be done too. So in the future, I think we will move in that direction when we include patients, because not everybody will have experience with a psychedelic. But that is then so that you understand the reason why we include healthy volunteers.
Thank you for your time, Kim, and
Thank
you for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome.